If you're a defense contractor waiting to get started on CMMC or your cybersecurity requirements, or you're still concerned, did you scope your environment correctly when it comes to what is applicable for these compliance requirements? This episode is specifically for you. My name is Greg Tomchick, CEO here at Valor Cybersecurity. And today we're going to talk about one of the biggest topics and one of the biggest concerns that we get brought to our company as a readiness partner to defense contractors, which is something called scoping or defining the boundary of applicability. So it's basically, where should we apply these compliance requirements in the smartest way possible to save time and money, but remain compliant and uphold what we've agreed to in doing business with the Department of Defense. And it's also one of the biggest challenges companies face. And this is one of those topics that we feel companies need to get right before they take any further steps. I always say that first step is the most important and typically the hardest one to do. And our first step, the first discussions we have, is what contracts are you servicing or providing products to, and where does that information flow? And that ultimately is going to be our scope or our boundary that we're applying these requirements, these measures to. And we're going to dive into a couple different strategies that we've seen companies do that helps them excel in this area, really minimizing the amount of time and money they spend on CMMC or cybersecurity compliance, and also some of the things that you should avoid in your scoping discussions if that's happening internally with internal IT, or maybe you have a security executive in your company that is helping you through this, or another readiness partner. You got to have these discussions with somebody that understands what to do and what not to do, and more on the latter, what not to do. I think a lot of companies know what they should do, but they don't know what they should avoid. So we're going to talk a lot about that today. And we just released the 2025 version of our CMMC compliance formula ebook. And the first topic we talk about is scoping. So we actually walk you through a scoping exercise that you can tailor to your specific organization. I think it's extremely important for you to go through that exercise, whether that's with an expert or internally. Where does that flow throughout the business process? That's really where we encourage you to start, is what is the business process from seeing the contracting opportunity or a prime contractor bringing that to you as a subcontractor? What are the steps your company goes through in order to deliver that final product or service and then store that information after contract closeout? Typically that looks like, you go to sam.gov, that's kind of the FCI area. You start to receive contract information. You put a bid in. That bid or bill of materials, if you're a product company, could be and probably is considered FCI definitely, but maybe CUI depending on the type of information, the type of service you're providing. And then you're allocated that contract if you go about and win it, and you get all these questions about, are you DFARS 7012 compliant? Do you have these measures in place? And then you go about delivering that product or service. And what does that process look like? Are you a manufacturing company? Are you just providing professional services? Are you providing some type of technical service where information from folks on site is being relayed back to your company's servers or email environment? So what are you using to interface with the Department of Defense is extremely important from a system standpoint, and that information flow. And basically your scope or your boundary is going to wrap around those systems that we just walked through. So you have to really start with the business process. That business process is going to have a data flow. You can classify what level of information is in each of those business process stages. And then you can start to kind of shape what that scope of applicability or boundary that you're going to put around that to protect and secure that information is going to look like. One of the hardest things to do is get to that graphic or get them in the room, the right stakeholders in the room to describe that business process. Typically you have business development, and then you have proposal development, and then you have kind of the service team, and then you have IT who's kind of supporting that entire business process, whether that's internal or external. And those are typically siloed in a way that they may not be communicating on what's sensitive and what's not. So bringing these stakeholders together for a 15 to 30 minute discussion to start the conversation, to say, what's our business process? What data is involved in that stage of the business process? Do we need to protect it or not? We see a lot of companies that rule out systems before asking themselves, does this process store, transmit sensitive information in doing business with the Department of Defense? And that's typically some of the hardest discussions we have to have, and we really have to kind of push different buttons to get them to think creatively on, does this process FCI or CUI? And typically it looks relatively similar in companies. Some type of CRM that goes into some type of proposal development, which could be Microsoft Word, and that's where kind of Microsoft or Google or these GCC high or government cloud systems come in, or companies use Prevail to encrypt emails back and forth between the government and then store that information in a Gov Cloud or Gov sponsored, Gov approved type solution. So it typically looks about the same, products or service. If you're a product company, you may manufacture things. That's going to be big into that external service provider or supply chain risk management component, which is something we talked about on a previous episode that you can go back to on the update from NIST 800-171 revision 2 to revision 3. It also applies the budget. The budget of CMMC is going to apply based off of the scope. So if you don't have the right scope, you're not going to be able to really define an accurate budget, and that helps you get buy-in from leadership. Ultimately, when you have a clear budget of how you're going to accomplish something, that's one of the things we include in months 2 or 3 is an accurate budget to give the CFO or give the financial officer of the company to be able to allocate resources appropriately to whoever's going to implement this. So what we encourage you to do is kind of take a step back and ask yourself a simple question. Do we have the right CMMC scope currently? And if you're doubting whether you have the right scope or not, or there's any doubt in your mind and you don't have that certainty, we'd recommend kind of going through that exercise again, because this is becoming more and more of a requirement that needs to be proved time and time again. And we see more and more companies submit SPRS scores thinking that that is the final checkbox, final step in the process. Then they go to win a contract, they throw the party, as I say, and then they get the question, send us your system security plan that proves the past SPRS score. CMMC is a condition of award. It's not a condition of winning a contract. It's a condition of actually receiving the award, the money to perform the work or deliver the product. And I think that's a key distinction. A lot of people think it's just checking the box, signing the dotted line, but ultimately it helps you to win the contract after you win it, win the money that's going to help your company grow, help your company be successful in the long term. When you can prove it, it's a competitive advantage because a lot of companies can't these days. So extremely important to scope correctly. What we've done as of recent, we've done this the past about 4 months, is we're taking on 2 companies each month that just sign on to the first month of our CMMC readiness program. And that is specifically called CMMC scoping exercise. And we have 1 slot left here in June and 1 slot left in July. Companies are starting to register for that program, sign on for that program, just to kind of rescope, make sure their scope is correct, and then make sure their plan going forward is accurate. And if you decide after that scoping exercise that you guys are good to go, you don't need to take any further action or need any further advice from us, then you basically offboard from our service model. So it can save you a lot of time and money. There's a lot of benefit, especially to companies under 100, to go through that scoping exercise to make sure they just take that first step versus thinking about we have to get from where we're at to 100% immediately. And that's what a lot of companies are doing. So they get the sticker shock of 50 grand because we need it yesterday, or we need it in the next 2 months in order to win this contract or get this award. So we want to offer that to you as a part of our community. And if that's something that interests you, you can reach out to us through our website at valor-cybersecurity.com. That's Valor with 1 R -cybersecurity.com. You can also download our CMMC compliance formula ebook from our website. You'll see the button with the ability to do that. Hopefully you found some benefit from this. Hopefully it just allows you to take a step back and say, am I confident in our scope? Or should we adjust our scope or get some outside perspectives or even inside perspectives if our scope is correct? So that's why we put these on each week. Until next time, my name is Tomchick. Stay safe and stay secure.